A lot of the statistics that we're going to calculate in this course are extremely tedious to calculate by hand. When I took statistics back in the 1990s, I thought that I hated statistics and it was really hard. In fact, what I hated was doing all of the calculations by hand. It's now the 21st century, and we don't have to do that. Now I'm going to show you how to do these calculations by hand, and we're going to work some examples on small data sets. But for large data sets, we're going to have the calculator do the hard work for us. Today, we're going to have 4 different data sets that we're going to work with. I'm going to give them to you now, and then I'm going to show you how to enter them on the calculator. Data set 1 represents the ages of 5 randomly selected students at an elementary school. The ages are 11, 8, 9, 6, and 8. Here's how we're going to enter this on the calculator. We are going to press the Stat key, which is right here. Then immediately hit Enter to choose Edit. Now, we see space for a bunch of data lists. I already have some data in one of my lists. I don't want that, so I'm going to get rid of it. If you already have data in one of your lists, go to that column, hit the up arrow, press Clear, and then Enter to clear the list. My lists across the screen are L1, L2, and L3. Shortly we'll go to the right and we'll find an L4 as well. If you have different list numbers across the top of your screen, or if you have data in one of your lists that you want to keep there, it's okay. You can just enter the data in a different list number, and then we'll just use a different list number when it comes time to do that. Okay, I'm going to enter data set 1 in L1. Here's how. To enter the numbers in our data set, just type each number followed by Enter. So the numbers in my data set are 11, I hit Enter, 8, I hit Enter, 9, I hit Enter, 6, I hit Enter, 8, I hit Enter. And this is what your calculator screen should look like when you're done. Notice it says L1 6 at the bottom here. 6 means if I entered another number, it would be the 6th number, which means that I've entered 5 numbers. That's a good way to quickly check that you've entered all of your numbers. So if you have not finished entering data set 1 in L1 yet, please pause the video and finish entering this on the calculator, and then resume the video and we'll work with the second data set. Now that we've finished entering data set 1 on the calculator, let's go on to data set 2. Data set 2 represents the number of credits that each of 11 randomly selected full-time students are taking this semester. We're going to enter data set 2 in L2. To do that, first we're going to hit the right arrow to get into L2. And now we're going to enter data set 2 exactly the way we did data set 1, pressing Enter after each number. So we'll start with the first number is 15, the second number is also 15, and now I'm going to move the calculator off the page so that you can see all of the numbers while we continue to enter data. Pause the video and enter the data now. I'll show you what the calculator screen looks like at the end in just a moment. As you can see, as we entered the data, we continued to scroll down on the calculator list. That's fine. The numbers we entered earlier are still at the top of the screen. We can see them again just by scrolling up. You'll also notice that List 1 and List 2 stayed lined up. We're going to make use of that later in the course. And finally, when we were at the bottom of List 2, notice if we scroll off the bottom, it loops us back to the top. When we were at the bottom of List 2, it said L2 12. That says the next entry we're going to enter is the 12th, which means the one we just entered is the 11th, which means we have 11 numbers. That's always a good sign. Okay, let's enter dataset 3 now. Dataset 3 represents the heights in inches of 8 randomly selected American women. We're going to enter that in List 3. In order to enter that in List 3, we're going to first hit the right arrow to access List 3, and then we'll enter this data set the way they did the other ones. So 69, 64, and so on. If you haven't yet finished entering List 3, go ahead and pause the video and finish. Again, when you finish entering this list, we had 8 numbers. When you finish entering, it should tell you that you're about to enter the 9th number if you entered another one. All right, our last data set is a really big data set. For data set 4, we asked 1,000 people how many siblings they have. Now, I am not going to write down 1,000 different numbers here. Instead, I'm going to present this data as a frequency table, as we saw in the last lecture. So, of the 1,000 people, 195 said they had no siblings, 133 said they had 1, 249 said they had 2, and so on. So how are we going to enter this on the calculator? We certainly don't want to type in 0 195 times. Fortunately, the calculator gives us a way to enter frequency lists. What we're going to do instead is to enter the values in L4 and the frequencies in L5. So in L4, we enter the value 0 siblings, and then in L5, we enter the frequency 195. Back to L4, we enter the value 1, and then in L5, we enter the frequency 333. Back to L4, we enter the value 2, and then in L5, we enter the frequency 249. L4, we enter the value 3. L5, we enter the frequency 147. L4, we enter the value 4. In L5, we enter the frequency 54. In L4, we enter the value 5. In L5, we enter the frequency 14. In L4, we enter the value 6. In L5, we enter the frequency 8. So that's how we enter a pair of lists in the calculator. We could also enter the lists just straight down the column, but switching back and forth between the columns like that helps us make sure that we're keeping everything synced up. And it's important that we keep those lists synced up, because it would be very different if we swapped the frequencies of two values. In those earlier lists, the order didn't matter at all. But here, it's important that we keep the value and its frequency in the same row. Okay, so now that we have all that data entered on the calculator, let's actually talk about our summary statistics.